embarked one day, the three of us, to go to the top of Mount Washington.
Yeah, we started at the north end at Pine Mountain. We started up Mount Madison. We started up Madison first. Madison, Adams.
And I had never at that point hiked to any of the White Mountains. So it was my beginning. We went up and up and up and up and up, and we got to a place called Thunder Junction.
And then there was thunderstorm, right?
Thunderstorm Junction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys ran into a thunderstorm, right? Is that the one that was really scary?
Yeah. Well, we had some of that, and we went along the Col. They call it Col or Call.
Call. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it got terrible weather, and we didn't have anything but $8.99 bags and a couple of tarps.
I believe it was the summer of 1970. That was our second summer at the Canterbury House. The year before, we had taken some day hikes in the White Mountains and stretched Mom to a great degree on the Liberty Flume Trails and Lafayette. Both John and I had also done some challenging hikes while campers at Trinity Church Camp. I did not go to camp in 1970 as I had aged out of camper age range for TCC. But John attended, as did also, I believe, Peter and Tim. John's attendance at camp that summer must have inspired him greatly, as he returned to Canterbury with ambitions to tackle the most challenging two-day hike in the eastern United States and perhaps far beyond. A traverse of the northern Presidential Range and Mount Washington in the White Mountains. We were armed with the AMC White Mountain Guide and its included maps, so John plotted the trails to hit sequentially Mount Madison, Adams, Jefferson, and Washington. Since John, then nor now, believes in over-planning, there were some major gaps in the projected height. First, we would exit the trail at Pink and Notch Camp, nearly 10 miles from where we parked at the trailhead. Second, we had no fixed campsite objective for the overnight stay. We would find something, never mind the fact that we would likely be above the tree line where the White Mountain National Forest forbids camping. We also weren't as well equipped and prepared as we might be if we were knowledgeable about the potential hazards. I took a light windbreaker and a sweatshirt, wore blue jeans and sneakers. We had several one-quart water bottles that we would fill from trailside springs or streams without treatment. We packed cold food. We had no camp stove. All these things would be red flags to me now, hopefully to you too. But the allure of a great hike was strong. So we set our alarm clocks and packed our backpacks. It's about a 1 hour and 40-minute drive from Canterbury to the trailhead for Mount Madison near Randolph. The weather at least looked good for the day, sunny and warm. I don't recall how early it was when we started hiking, not before 7. We took a scenic but very challenging trail up Mount Madison, the Hauker Ridge Trail. We passed several cascades along the way and kept our canteens full. The distinctive aspect of Hauker Ridge is that it climbs several successive knobs called hauks that provide an illusion of reaching a summit, and then after mounting it, reveal another apparent summit beyond it. I recall that you, Dad, were in decent shape in your 40th year, if carrying a little extra padding around the waist. You were game for the upward push that John kept us on. We made the summit of Madison, 5,367 feet, in respectable time, then descended to Madison Spring Hut at 4,800 feet. This hut has been operated by the Appalachian Mountain Club for over 125 years, and on that day provided us some refreshment before pressing on to Mount Adams, nearly 1,000 feet above. An article in the AMC's periodical Appalachia described Mount Adams as a holy mountain according to the Aetherius Society, allegedly from visits there by extraterrestrial beings. On leaving the Madison hut, it was getting late in the afternoon, but we were still energized to bag another peak that day. As we made the final steps to the summit of Adams, we encountered another group of young men and teenagers summiting from the opposite side. By an extraordinary coincidence, this group was from Trinity Church Camp and led by a camp counselor. John would know his name. Ed sticks in my mind, with whom John had had some treks earlier in the summer. We thus had some evidence that Mount Adams has at least
Sullivan.
spiritual quality, if not sacred.
Ed Sullivan.
After some exclamations of how amazing this unexpected meeting was, and of course views of spectacular peaks and valleys through the 360-degree panorama, we and the Trinity campers parted in different directions. They possibly to a shelter called Craig Camp, and we along the trail descending to the south toward Mount Jefferson. We passed an intersection of trails marked with a cairn called Thunderstorm Junction for reasons that one may guess. That is, that it was a natural merging point for extreme weather systems. We shortly found water at a place called Peabody Spring, and by this time the sun was hidden behind the ridge above us. So, finding a more or less flat and grassy spot between some rocks nearby, we decided to camp. We had a light supper, which I recall included Spam, very tasty when you're hungry, potato chips, and perhaps some granola.
And we didn't realize that just ahead of us there was a hut. But we spread our tarps on the ground, and then we got into our sleeping bags, huddled together on top of a tarp, got another tarp over us, and all night we held onto the tarp, and it was terrible weather.
We rigged a tarp above us as the wind, which had been blowing a steady 30 to 40 miles per hour, picked up even more. After dark, we also got a steady, not quite a hard rain through the night. I don't recall thunder and lightning. We stayed dry enough, but probably slept only fitfully, as the ground wasn't that soft.
Yeah, it was bad. Thunder
We
and
had to
lightning.
hold two hands, and we did sleep some. Well, I did anyway. You did, I think. And the morning we had 2 or 3 inches of snow on
Oh my gosh. Was this the one that you guys were praying to under the tarp?
One of the times. But that was one of the times we were praying that we would make it through the night.
If you make it through the night. and when we got up in the morning, we put socks on our hands.
When the tarp held in place through the rains and the wind, we woke to a gray dawn and fog. We had a cold cereal breakfast, repacked, and hit the trail early. Our hands were cold and, having no gloves, put socks on. We made the gradual and then more steep descent from the south shoulder of Adams as the wind blew thick fog across our path. In time we saw far below us the stainless steel half-cylinder of the old emergency shelter at Edmonds Call. Several men had spent the night at the shelter. One of them saw us with our makeshift hand warming and exclaimed, "Socks!"
to keep warm.
Oh my gosh, you're cold.
And we walked down the trail, and there was a hut, which we could have been in. And there were 2 guys in there. And they said, "Oh, that's a great idea to wear socks on
We wore socks on our hands.
Yeah.
Because our hands were so cold.
We resumed our ascent from the call, with another 800 feet of elevation to be regained. The fog persisted, and we reached the summit with no view of our ultimate goal of Mount Washington. On that foggy day in 1970, we continued on along the ridge from Jefferson, and gradually the clouds burned off from the high sun. We opted to summit Mount Clay, even though, strictly speaking, it does not rise far enough above the ridge to qualify as a distinct peak. The summit of Washington is covered with buildings, antennas, and lots of people who rode up the auto road or the coal-fired cog railway.
But I remember feeling so superior to all these people riding
The Cog Railroad.
cog railway, and we had made it through the night.
Thus our destination lay continually in sight as we enjoyed what had become a crystal clear day. Finally, we emerged on the roof of New England, and we met winds stronger than any we had yet encountered, probably 60 miles per hour. I remember leaning into the wind as never before nor since. We may have lingered as much as an hour, but we had 4,000 feet of descent ahead of us, which would tax our knees plenty. The views across Boot Spur were spectacular, into the Great Gulf as well. And finally, over the head wall of Tuckerman Ravine. On this August day, the last of the snow collected at the bottom of the glacial cirque had recently formed an arch. Now, as we passed the point where great blocks of ice had just that day collapsed. Someone said that yesterday a group had posed for a photo beneath the arch. If so, they were lucky and foolish.
I remember going to Mount Washington, and when we came down, we went down into Tuckerman's Ravine.
Yeah, we did.
And there were a bunch of guys rock hounding rose quartz up there.
Oh,
And some guy was talking about how he's bringing this back to his professor. They had some giant piece of rock that looked like it weighed 80 pounds. And I thought, how the hell are they going to carry that out of here? And I remember your one comment at the top was, boy, I wish that we had a whole bunch of beer because we could probably sell them for $1 a can to every one of these people that's walking up this hill.
Really?
You were talking about selling beer up there because, boy, you could just clean up. Well, if we had that much beer up there, we'd be drinking it ourselves.
The path from the snow arch skirts the northern edge of the ravine to provide a gradual alternative to the steep descent. We reached a point offering a picture-worthy look back up the ravine. Two men had stopped there, and we chatted briefly on the narrow path. They weren't yet ready to resume their walk, so they invited us to pass by, carefully, as there was a drop of some hundreds of feet from the edge of the trail. This is not my memory, and it probably has been embellished in the retelling. But as I passed them, the edge of my pack frame allegedly brushed against the back of one of the men. Dad, what's your memory? We eventually found the floor of the widening ravine, and the trail became something akin to an old logging road. John would well envision skiing here. Finally, we emerged in the vicinity of Pinkham Notch Camp, in deepening shadows as the sun had set beyond Washington. But our trek was not quite complete as we had to make our way back to the Madison trailhead 8 miles north. Fortunately, we were not shy about hitchhiking, and we soon found someone to pick up 3 tired hikers and their packs. Dropped off at the car, we realized we had dropped a canteen in the back seat of our benefactor's car. Well, hoped they would enjoy the use of it. We were eager to get a hot meal, and then after the 100-mile ride home, the chance to tell Mom about the great adventure. In the years since, I've read the book, Not Without Peril, Misadventures on the Presidential Range, and considered that if our timing and luck had been worse, we could have become a chapter in the book, a cautionary tale for other hikers in the region. But we were fortunate as it developed. I'm sure John has had many close scrapes in the years since, even outside of the bike trip. But this probably ranks high on the list of hazardous things I've done and survived in my life.